reinvents itself. Its unique restlessness has found kindred spirits among a growing number of creative leaders who call it home.
Logistically, Singapore is an absolutely ideal and efficient base from which to work.
Coming from 3 different countries, we saw Singapore as the ideal place to start our design studio.
Each people has a slightly different language of the light. So we have to learn what is the Singapore and what is the expectation of the people here in Singapore.
Whether it's designed in Singapore, designed by Singapore, or designed for Singapore, find out how these design superheroes are joining hands to help the Lion City find its own unique design identity. Just 10 years ago, Singapore was just a little red dot on the world design map. Today, it's getting into its swing as a creative hothouse by becoming a regional magnet for designers of international renown. Based in Singapore for more than 30 years, Australian architect Kerry Hill was one of those who rode the first wave, and he has never looked back since.
I initially moved from Perth to Hong Kong in 1971. After a year in Hong Kong, I lived in Indonesia until 1978, and then was posted to Singapore with the architectural firm that I worked with. We parted company after a year, so I walked down the road, hung up a sign, and started Kerry Hill Architects. That was 32 years ago, and we've been here ever since.
Today, Kerry Hill is one of Asia's most celebrated architects. He has also earned recognition for designing buildings that not only respond to their culture and climate, but are enriched by them. One of his earlier works, the Garlick Avenue House, stands out as one such example.
The Garlick Avenue House, whilst it's one of our smaller projects, it was designed for a young professional couple who have a very busy working schedule. It's a house that simply responds to their needs, and it's a distillation of all of the ideas that we believe are intrinsic to building in the tropics, whether it's the filtering of light, the exclusion of rain, the need for cross-ventilation.
Following in Kerry Hill's footsteps, the designers from Out of Stock also decided to drop their anchor in Singapore 3 years ago, despite the fact that they were all trained in different parts of Europe.
We are familiar with Singapore, we know where to get certain materials, where to find the craftsmen, we have sufficient industry support here. So that actually played a big part in us deciding to base ourselves here.
Planting their roots in the Garden City has helped Out of Stock harvest their prized creation, the Black Forest table. For the designers, the decisive makeover was to defy classic composition, not only to create an organic handcrafted look, but also a unique tripod base from 2 interlocking Y-joints.
For Black Forest, it really started from just a few branches that we pick up off the ground, and they have some kind of Y joints that we're playing with. And we just thought that if we sort of stack the branches together, we could have a very interesting tripod system.
Unlike Out of Stock, which ideas were made feasible by what Singapore has to offer, Japanese lighting designer Kaoru Mende had to constantly adapt to the local context to draw up the city's master lighting plan for revitalizing its urban nightscape.
Singapore is much more, the completely different climate from Japan. So in Singapore, many people like to have a much more cooler image of the light, which is not just for the warm color, but some whitish or sometimes white blue color will be appreciated by this climate. So each climate or the history or the culture has a slightly different language.
To create for Singapore the same iconic skylines that define cities such as Paris or New York, Karu Mende would not have to venture too far for design inspiration. To turn the spotlight on its unique features as a tropical city, Karu Mende pictured the central business district as the perfect place to help the world see Singapore in a different light.
CBD barrier area, the many skyscrapers is going on. The vertical plane is just characterized the Singapore or nightscape, like New York, Manhattan. But facade of the skyscrapers, just maybe the color temperature, the color of the light will be not only a warm light, but going up to the fade to the yellow, the white, and the blue-white. And at last, at the top of the building, the head can be much more the cool color to just show the very unique nightscape compared to the Paris or the New York.
But for out of stock, the magic ingredient that completed the mix for the Black Forest table was finding the right chemistry with the right craftsman.
We went through like 2 or 3 craftsmen before we found the right person to craft it in a way that was refined and yet strong enough in terms of the structure. Yeah, we have to work with different people, and because different craftsmen have different skill sets, different way of working, and we also have to communicate with them differently because we often have to take into account like they have a fixed way of doing certain things in terms of woodworking. And so with every craftsman, we actually learn a lot.
Living and working in Singapore for more than 30 years. That was what taught Carrie Hill the trick to design a home in the tropics, for the tropics.
The house is designed in such a way that it can be opened, unair conditioned and very livable. It's about the placement of water, the use of screens to filter the sun in. As you know, in the tropics, we have a lot of overcast and grey days. So the trick is not to exclude the sun, it's to invite it in through a series of filters.
By cutting his teeth on smaller projects such as the Garlic Avenue house, find out how those modest beginnings helped Carrie Hill move on to design some of Asia's most sumptuous resorts.